Hi, I'm Ned Parks with FlashPoint, a business moment with a business leader from the greater Canton area. And this is brought to you by Kent State Stark's Office of Corporate and Community Services. This segment, we're here with Trina Cutter, the CEO and president of the Western Reserve Public Media that operates public television stations WNEO and WEAO. Trina, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I want to talk to you about your background a little bit. I know you were a sergeant in the Air Force, is that correct?
Staff sergeant.
Staff sergeant in the Air Force. Thank you, E6.
E5.
E5. and tell us a little bit about what you bring from that experience to being a CEO and leader of a 27-employee organization with hundreds and hundreds and thousands of volunteers and freelance people and everything else that you have to run in the public eye as well as leading the organization itself.
Right. I was in the United States Air Force. I was at a Tactical Air Command, which was a fighter pilot training base for F-15s. And I was trained on the AWACS system. It was a Division of Air Traffic Control. So not tower control where they're taking off and landing, and not ground control where they're, controlling them in, but radar control where we did in-air refueling missions and dogfighting missions. And being from a Tactical Air Command, we worked very closely with the Strategic Air Command, which was strategy and tactics, which is perfect combination for a budding CEO to work in a corporation, because that's really the foundational groundwork for a successful organization, if you ask me, is what's the strategy and what's the tactics to implement that strategy.
Wow, that's really interesting. One of the things I get is, having been in the military myself, is people always say, well, in the military as a leader you could have done this, and we can't do that in the civilian world, so therefore there's no connection. Oh. And I've never bought that, and I know you don't buy it.
No, I don't buy it at all. It teaches you, a Tactical Air Command, when you're doing in-air refueling missions or you're doing dogfighting missions, you have all sorts of options, all sorts of situations that you get yourself into. And the slogan at a Tactical Air Command is always ready, always prepared. So no matter what, be prepared for the surprises, be prepared for the consequences that may happen. Think through those consequences, know what could potentially happen, and then be ready for them if they do happen. That is foundational things that you can apply to any application, you can put to anything.
So when you think about then leading your staff now, and you have an employee who maybe hasn't done the right thing, or it's not jumping up and down. I mean, it's not what we did in the military, is jump up and down and scream. I mean, certainly we find that everywhere, but there's other ways that we go about doing that, and you've brought some of those clearly with you. Not only the strategy and the tactics, but really working with the employee. I know my experience is a really good officer or a really good NCO was always working to help develop the people that were under them. It wasn't just about screaming orders.
Right. Well, if I go back to the military experience, you have very basic training on very specific things that you do when situations come up. And there's like pages and pages of things that you memorize. For instance, if a pilot calls you and he has an engine on fire, you are to say, Roger, understand, number 2 engine on fire, over. I mean, every single thing. If you can't identify an aircraft, you have to say, you have 2 minutes to do that. You have a very specific list of things that you have to say to that pilot that's on the frequency to identify them. So what that is saying is that you have to have these foundational things in place, and that's exactly what I do in my operation. I'm known as a turnaround manager. I come into an organization that needs some work, and the first thing I look at is the foundational structure of that organization. Are all of things in place so that we can move from those sort of structural things, like for instance financial planning, financial reporting, the personnel issues, are they all in place? Do we have a good personnel file? Do we have a good personnel record? Do we know all of the sort of structural things of an organization that are sort of the foundation of the structure, so that then we can focus on how do we implement those. And that's where the creativity comes in. I was driving down here from Kent this morning. There's 6 different ways for me to drive from Kent to Canton. Then I have to look at, again, my military training. What factors do I consider in which route I take?
Checking those options.
Exactly. So same thing with an organization is, I'm going to discipline somebody. What do I want to accomplish? And then how do I achieve that in the best way? And what factors do I need to consider when I'm trying to accomplish that?
So for our listeners in this segment, in the FlashPoint wrap-up would be foundation, strategy, and tactics.
No doubt.
Thanks, Trina.
Sure.
Glad to have you.